Hey folks, this is Sebastian Bleak again. I got this video going for my Never Stop Learning blog. It's going to be for the entry for week 95, Shadows and Highlights. So if you want to know more about that, just go to sebastianbleak.com. On the top you'll see a link that says artwork, and that'll take you directly to my Never Stop Learning blog, and look for week 95, Shadows and Highlights. Alright, so I have this picture of this frog. This is the one that you'll find on that entry. Go to image rotation, and I'm going to rotate this guy 90 degrees counterclockwise, and it brings it straight up for me like that. It looks great. One thing before I get into the shadows and highlights, I want to get rid of some of these gaps here. So I'm going to make a new layer above my background. I have my spot healing brush right here. It's set to content aware and sample all layers. And what this will do is it'll allow me to fill in all these gaps with leaves. It's like a way for me to reintroduce some leaves in here. So anywhere I see some of this dirt, I went ahead and I just filled it up with new leaves. The reason I did this is I wanted it to match kind of this side of it, where so it'll be a little bit more uniform, and there's leaves throughout my image now. Okay, great. So now that I have these two layers, I like to keep it like that in case I want to edit them later. So I just bring this drop down menu while they're both selected, and I'll click on Convert to Smart Object. And now it's fully editable, so if I double click on it, I still have access to this layer, and I could do some more filling in if I want, or whatever else I might need. All I have to do is accept that change, and it'll update it here for me. Okay, now let's get into these shadows and highlights. It's under the image menu, under adjustments, over here, shadows and highlights. You select that. Most of the time you're going to see just the basic panel, and it looks like this. It'll be set to 35%. What this actually does is the shadows, it'll make them brighter. That's what this part of it does. And then also for the highlights, it makes them darker. So if your highlights are too bright, you want to come in here. If your shadows are too dark, you want to come in here too. That'll help you out. I actually like how my shadows are, so I'm going to bring this to 0 because I want to leave them alone. I want them nice and dark. But the highlights, to me, they're too bright right here. I want to bring those down a little bit. So I'll go to 100% to see what it does, and then I'll slowly start backing off until I see something I like. That looks pretty good to me. But I'm not happy with how these leaves look yet. They're kind of gray to me, and I think there's more I could do to them. So I'll go to this Show More options, and there's this big panel here, has a bunch of stuff in here, and I don't know what all these pieces do yet because, again, this is my first look at shadows and highlights. What I do know, though, is that we already set this amount section to 0, so that's done. Tonal width, I'm not going to mess with that on either one of these because I'm not that familiar with them. And from what I read, if you leave them at 50% for both of them, you should be just fine. What I do want to play with, though, is this radius. Unfortunately, this is a shadow area, and I already set that to 0%, so I don't think this is going to make much impact on my image, so I'll just leave that alone. Here's the one I want, the radius for the highlights. If I bring this up to 2,500 pixels, you see what that does. I actually want to back it down a little bit. You kind of see the difference here. I'll jump back and forth so you can see it. Right there looks pretty good to me, actually. There you go. Nice and settled in there. Looks good. Next is this color correction area. This takes care of saturation. It's actually adding saturation at the moment. If I were to bring this back down to 0, that's how it is with no saturation being added to it. It's pretty neutral. But I want saturation here. If you notice, the more saturation I add, there's some color coming on here, so that adds attention to it. It brings your focus back to the subject's face there. But still hasn't done anything for my leaves, and they're kind of gray still, and that's mostly because they're my midtones. That's where I could affect it right here in my midtone contrast. So like most things, I'll bring it up to 100% and see what drastic effects it has on it, and I'll back off of it. If you see here, it turned it almost to like a painter or painterly effect, or some kind of, I don't know, some kind of artistic effect on there. It looks great, but I wanted to keep my photographic feel, so I'll just back off on it a little bit until it starts looking like a photograph again. And I think that looks great. So I'll go ahead and hit OK to accept that. And then once I got to this point, I ran it through, I had a couple adjustment layers on there, and I ran it through Adobe Camera Raw to finish it off. If you want to see what the final image looks like, I actually have it right here. It'd be best to go ahead and just check it out on my blog, Never Stop Learning. It's on WordPress. Again, you could just go to sebastianbleak.com, click on the link up top that says artwork, and it'll take you directly to my Never Stop Learning blog, and look for week 95, Shadows and Highlights. Thanks for checking it out. Have a great one.